Imagine you die, and instead of, I don't know, a terrifying God with a gavel waiting to judge your sins, you're actually handed a Bill of Rights.
Right, which completely shatters the entire framework we usually expect.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, usually when we talk about a courtroom, we expect a very sterile, terrestrial procedure. You know, there are the wooden benches, the judge in the black robe sitting up high, the wooden gavel on the desk.
You expect a lawyer pointing at you saying, well, here's the evidence of your life.
Right. We tend to want our accountability to be visible. We want it legislated in a room with a physical door that we can ideally walk right out of. But then you step into the world of esoteric history, and that wooden courtroom completely dissolves.
It absolutely vanishes. We stop looking at judgment as this punitive legal proceeding, and we start looking at it as an intrinsic architecture of the soul itself.
The landscape shifts from a municipal courthouse to a literal cosmic threshold. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission is to explore how humanity's 3,000-year-old obsession with cosmic accountability evolved.
And it is a wild evolution.
Oh, it really is. We are tracking a single, massive, mind-bending idea from the ancient Egyptian scales of justice, straight into a secret 1990 Soviet manuscript, and finally into a cutting-edge 2026 digital art project.
We've got an incredible stack of sources for you today.
We really do. We are pulling from deep research dossiers on Russian esoteric history, a comprehensive scholarly lineage of the, what they call a cosmic courtroom.
Yes, and we're also digging into the locked specifications for a 2026 project by SurR.Ai.
Right, a project titled The Subtle Seven, Reimagined Journeys of Destiny and Self. And those specs actually include poetry and visual art, which we'll get into later.
Bridging these completely different eras and mediums requires us to look at the exact same fundamental question about human existence, just through highly varied lenses.
Okay, let's unpack this. What if facing divine judgment isn't a terrifying punishment that you have to avoid? What if instead standing before the absolute is an inalienable human right that you actually get to claim?
To understand the sheer magnitude of that conceptual explosion, we have to ground this abstract idea in a highly specific, volatile moment in history.
Let's do it. Set the scene for us.
Think about Moscow in 1989 and 1990. The Soviet Union is actively collapsing.
Right, a massively chaotic time.
Exactly. And for 70 years prior to this, spiritual and occult texts were strictly illegal. I mean, they existed only as samizdat, which are clandestine underground manuscripts.
People were secretly copying these texts by hand, right? Like in freezing basements.
By hand or on old typewriters, yes.
Yeah.
Risking imprisonment just to read them. And just to be clear for you listening, we aren't taking any political stance on the Soviet or anti-Soviet factions here. We are purely reporting on the historical context provided in the sources to explain how these texts emerged.
Right, exactly. We're just looking at the historical environment.
So then Glasnost hits. The governmental policies of openness suddenly allow this suppressed, whispered tradition to just burst into legal print. It's an absolute floodgate opening.
And it's in this exact threshold year, 1990, that a Russian mathematician turned mystic, writing under the pseudonym of Avessalom Podvodnyy, publishes a framework.
Right, a framework called the Bill of Rights and Actual Possibilities.
I have to say, a mathematician turned mystic sitting at the collapse of an empire already sounds like the protagonist of a massive sci-fi novel.
Oh, totally. But his primary source material is even more dramatic. Podvodnyy is heavily synthesizing a massive cosmological treatise called Rose of the World.
Written by Daniel Andreev.
Yes. Andreev composed this text between 1950 and 1958 inside Vladimir prison while serving a sentence for anti-Soviet activity, and he literally wrote it on tiny, smuggled scraps of paper.
Oh, wow. So he was in a prison cell writing a massive esoteric cosmological map on scraps.
Exactly. His widow actually hid the manuscript for decades after his death. When it finally exploded into public consciousness in 1989, it offered this incredibly dense, multi-layered vision of spiritual dimensions.
Then Podvodnyy takes this prison-smuggled revelation and structures it into his Bill of Rights.
Right. He organizes the chaos into a structured system.
So Podvodnyy is sitting at this cultural ground zero, and the title he chooses is just brilliant. In 1990, the phrase Bill of Rights must have been electric in Russia.
Oh, absolutely electric. The collapsing Soviet system was literally in the middle of drafting a new constitutional order.
Right. The language of rights, of legal guarantees, of new constitutions, was everywhere in the streets. And Podvodnyy takes this intense secular political fervor and maps it directly onto the human soul.
It is a profound shift in vocabulary.
So it's like taking the language of a constitutional convention and mapping it onto a mystical, interdimensional map. He's drafting a Magna Carta for the human spirit.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And he achieves this through a massive structural remix of Eastern and Western traditions.
He's pulling from everywhere, right?
Yeah, he weaves together the Hindu tantric chakra system, the Christian 7 deadly sins, the Buddhist concepts of hindrances or kleshas, and this deep Russian esoteric tradition.
It's a huge synthesis.
It is. He builds a framework of 7 chakras, assigning each one a specific spiritual right. But, and here's the catch, for every right, he identifies a specific parasitic entity.
Like a saboteur.
Exactly, a saboteur actively trying to block you from claiming that specific right.
What really stood out to me in the dossiers is the direction this entire system flows. Because, usually when you read about chakras or kundalini energy, it's all about ascending.
Right, moving from the bottom up.
Yeah, you meditate to move energy up from the base of your spine to reach some higher ethereal plane. But Podvodny's system flows downward. It completely inverts the usual path.
It does. The rights cascade down from the creator. The sequence starts at the very top, at the crown chakra, the Sahasrara, with the ultimate right to face God.
And then it descends from there.
Yes, it descends through the body, all the way down to the root chakra, the Muladhara. The 7th right, located at the very bottom, is simply the right to live.
Just to exist physically.
Right. It's the most absolute, grounded fact of physical existence. Podvodnyy pairs this root where to live with a saboteur he calls the serpent.
And the serpent represents what, exactly?
It represents a deep existential dread that tries to sever your actual grip on living your daily life. It makes you terrified of just being alive.
Wait, I want to go back up to the top because I'm struggling with what he places at the crown chakra.
The dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually the crown chakra is all about pure enlightenment, absolute peace, maybe a 1,000-petaled lotus. But Podvodnyy puts a dragon up there as the parasitic entity. Why is a dragon guarding the ultimate spiritual connection to the universe?
Well, in Podvodny's Russian text, this dragon represents Samautvержde, which translates beautifully to the performing ego.
The performing ego.
Yeah. This isn't a scaly, fire-breathing beast from a fantasy novel. The performing ego sabotages our connection to the higher self by substituting genuine connection with frantic, public display.
Oh, I see. It demands visibility for all the wrong reasons.
Exactly. It intercepts your direct, silent line to the absolute by making you want to perform your spirituality.
So it's the part of you that wants to be seen performing spirituality rather than actually just being spiritual.
Precisely. It wants to manage your image, curate your aesthetic, and basically present a counterfeit version of enlightenment to the world.
Wow. So the true right of the crown isn't to achieve some detached floating bliss. It's the right to bypass this ego entirely.
Yes. It is the right to stand accountable, directly and silently, before the absolute, without any masks.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Humanity hasn't just started thinking about this. We've been obsessed with this exact scenario, standing accountable before the absolute for a very, very long time.
Millennia, truly.
Yeah, the sources map out a 3,000-year historical lineage of this cosmic courtroom concept. And it starts in ancient Egypt, with the Hall of Two Truths in the Book of the Dead.
The Egyptian framework is intensely procedural. It's terrifying, honestly. The deceased is led into a vast hall where their literal heart is placed on a golden scale.
And it's weighed against the feather.
Yes, against the feather of Ma'at, who is the goddess of truth and cosmic order. But before the weighing even happens, the deceased must recite the negative confession.
The negative confession, which is basically a list of 42 declarations.
Right, saying things like, I have not stolen, I have not murdered, I have not caused anyone to weep. It's a massive self-audit in front of 42 divine judges.
And if your heart is heavy with guilt, like if it outweighs the feather of truth, what happens?
It is immediately devoured by Amit, a terrifying creature that's part crocodile, part lion, and part hippopotamus.
That is a terrifying combination.
It really is. And the punishment isn't eternal torture. It's actually the complete cessation of your existence. You are entirely erased.
I'm having a hard time reconciling this incredibly passive, terrifying scale with what happens next in our sources, because history moves forward to Plato's Republic.
Specifically, the myth of
Right. In the Egyptian system, you're just standing there hoping a crocodile doesn't eat your heart. But Plato completely flips the script on accountability, making it entirely active.
Plato introduces the terrifying burden of agency. In the mythoverse, souls in the afterlife aren't just being graded on their past behavior, they are presented with a vast, sprawling array of possible next lives.
So they actually get to choose.
Yes, they can choose to be tyrants, animals, ordinary citizens, athletes. And the prophet in the myth explicitly announces that the blame belongs to the chooser. God is blameless.
Which means accountability isn't just a review of your old resume, it's the profound responsibility of choosing your next path.
Exactly. And the sources point out that if a soul hasn't lived an examined philosophical life, they might make a terrible mistake.
Right, they might look at the life of a wealthy tyrant, see the power and the gold, and impulsively choose it.
Completely failing to realize, until it's too late, that the life they chose includes horrific consequences, like eating their own children. It's so dark. So the cosmic courtroom shifts from a test of your past deeds to a test of your philosophical discernment.
And then, jumping forward again to the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, specifically the Bardo Thodol, we see an incredibly profound psychological evolution of this whole concept.
The Book of the Dead, basically.
Right. In the intermediate state between death and rebirth, which is called the Bardo, the consciousness encounters an array of terrifying, wrathful deities, entities with fangs drinking blood from skull cups.
But the twist here is that these aren't objective monsters waiting to punish you.
Not at all. The radical teaching of the Bardo Thodol is that these wrathful judges are entirely projections of your own unintegrated mind.
Wait, so they are you?
Yes, they are your own unresolved psychological material, your anger, your ignorance, your attachments, returning to you as an external terrifying image.
Let me make sure I'm grasping this. It's basically like when you project your own insecurities onto your boss or your partner today.
That is a perfect modern analogy. You walk into a room, you feel guilty about something, and suddenly you interpret everyone's neutral expression as intense judgment. But you're actually creating the courtroom in your own head.
Exactly. In the Tibetan framework, the judge, the judged, and the verdict are all one continuous encounter with your own consciousness.
So how do you get out of it?
Liberation in that moment is simply recognizing that these terrifying projections are your own mind. If you recognize them, you are freed.
And if you don't?
If you run from them in terror, you are pulled right back into the cycle of rebirth.
This psychological intimacy really sets us up for the Russian Orthodox concept mentioned in the dossiers, which is sobornost.
Sobornost, which translates to conciliarity.
Right. In this tradition, you don't face judgment alone in a dark room or purely inside your own mind. You face it amid a cloud of witnesses.
The angels, the saints, the living, the dead. You are judged by an interconnected community. It's deeply relational.
So think about the trajectory we've just mapped out for you. The Egyptian scales, Plato's burden of choice, the Tibetan mind projections, the Orthodox cloud of witnesses.
For millennia, across all these diverse cultures, facing the absolute was framed as an inescapable obligation. It was a heavy burden, a terrifying trial that you had to endure when you died.
Like a mandatory court summons that you cannot skip.
But this brings us right back to Podvodny's 1990 framework. This is what scholars call the juridical political turn.
The juridical political turn. Okay, what does that mean in this context?
Podvodny's masterstroke was changing this ancient inevitability into a right. It's no longer a terrifying trial you must face after death.
It becomes a right you hold right now.
Exactly. It is an inalienable power you get to exercise right now in this life. The parasitic entities, like the dragon at the crown, aren't punishing you on behalf of the universe.
They are trying to strip you of your fundamental right to simply be seen by the absolute. So instead of God dragging you into a courtroom, your own ego is playing defense attorney. It's trying to settle out of court so you don't have to take the stand.
That is exactly what the ego does. It is terrified of the absolute truth.
So it throws up all this noise, all this performance. Claiming this right is actually an act of rebellion against your own ego?
It requires an active dismantling of the mechanisms the ego uses to hide. And that brings us to how this rich, dense Soviet esoteric history is being translated into our current reality.
A 2026 digital attention economy.
Yes, which is fascinating.
Let's talk about SurR.Ai and Gate Day. This is the 2026 digital art project that builds on everything we just discussed.
Right. They created a locked specification for the crown chakra.
And they built what they call a triadic artifact, meaning it has 3 interconnected bodies: vision, vibration, and voice.
Let's start with the vision. The visual component is highly deliberate. At the bottom of the image, there is an incredibly saturated, vibrant mosaic city of jewel-colored blocks.
The sources say this represents Enroth.
Yes, Enroth, which in Andreev's cosmology is the dense physical plane of our mortal life.
So every individual life is a single vivid piece in that larger divine design.
Exactly. Then, in the middle, there's this liminal threshold with a pale sun and a dark planet hovering at the horizon. But the upper register is what is truly striking.
Yeah, that part gave me chills. Up in the cosmic cloud feathers, there are two massive celestial watcher eyes. The sources call them egregoroi.
Right, an egregore, in esoteric terminology, is an autonomous entity created by a collective group mind.
Like a psychic manifestation of the community's shared focus.
Yes. So those eyes up in the clouds reflect the Russian concept of sobernost we discussed earlier, the plurality of witness. It's not one singular cyclopean eye of an angry god.
It's a collective awake witnessing. That brings us to the vibration, the video component. And I'm going to admit some heavy skepticism here.
I think that's fair.
The sources describe this as a 4-second, low-resolution glitch video minted on the blockchain. Now, whenever I hear minted on the blockchain paired with ancient spirituality, my internal alarm bells go off.
You're worried it's a gimmick.
Exactly. Isn't this just slapping crypto jargon onto esoteric art to make a quick buck?
It's a very fair question, but the mechanism here is actually deeply conceptual. Think about what a blockchain fundamentally is. It's an immutable public ledger.
Meaning you can't alter it once it's there.
Right. You can't edit it, you can't curate it, and you certainly can't put a flattering filter on it after the fact. Remember the dragon, the performing ego.
The entity that constantly disrupts our spiritual channel with mental noise.
Exactly. It constantly tweaks and manages our image, but the blockchain prevents that entirely.
Oh, wow. So the digital glitch is the visual signature of that ego's noise.
Yes. The glitch is the visual representation of the ego's hostile subroutine. By freezing that glitch into a 4-second loop and placing it immutably on the blockchain, SurR.Ai is using the ultimate uneditable technology to trap an ego that relies entirely on editing.
That is brilliant. They are literally using the blockchain as a digital cage for the ego.
It permanently traps the entity's interference so the soul can finally have a clear channel.
Okay, my skepticism is gone. That is fascinating. So the third part of the artifact is the voice. It's a canonical poem from 2023.
Yes. And the sources emphasize that this poem operates on an apophatic limit.
Which means it entirely refuses to name God directly.
Because naming the absolute is a function of a lower chakra, the throat chakra. At the crown, trying to name God is a trap.
Because it reduces a massive, incomprehensible reality into a tiny human concept.
Precisely. You must stand in silence. That's why the poem uses very expansive terms instead of direct names.
Right, it says, in cosmic realms where planets wend, a greater force we shall transcend, to plead our case, our truth defend. Before the azure, judgment send.
Notice it says the azure, or a greater force, never a direct name.
The sources also point out the influence of the Russian poet Vladimir Khlebnikov regarding the concept of time in this poem.
Khlebnikov was obsessed with the mathematics of time and destiny.
Right. The poem says, the clock of life, its ticking hand, relentless, bold, we cannot stand. It carves our paths, designs our fates.
In this framework, time itself is the medium of destiny. The trial isn't a singular event waiting for you at the end of time.
The trial is happening now.
Yes, inside the ticking of the clock. Every second you are alive is a frame of the judgment.
And it all culminates in the very last stanza. So live with grace, embrace the light, for cosmic forces watch the night. In realms unknown, our fates are sealed, to stand before the great, revealed.
That last word is the key to everything.
I want to zero in on that. Why did they choose revealed instead of judged?
If we pull together everything we've talked about today, that single word contains 30 centuries of philosophical evolution. Revealed connects back to the ancient Egyptian concept of being ma'keru.
Being true voice when your heart is weighed.
Exactly. It connects to the Tibetan Buddhist realization that you must recognize your own mind without running away.
So the ultimate right we have as human beings isn't the right to an acquittal.
No, it isn't a guarantee that you are flawless. It is simply the right to be seen exactly as you are all the way through without the performing ego's mask.
The dragon wants you to hide in a frenzy of performance.
Right. The right is the power to finally appear.
So what does this all mean for you listening? We've traced this obsession from Egyptian scales to a Soviet prison manuscript to a blockchain glitch trapping the ego. But let's bring it into your daily life.
It's intensely practical when you really look at it.
It is. Think about when your own performing ego is frantically taking the wheel. When are you curating your image, managing other people's perceptions of you, playing defense attorney, rather than just allowing yourself to stand truthfully in your own life?
Firing that defense attorney, silencing the dragon is a profound daily practice.
I want to leave you with one final thought, something for you to mull over that builds on everything we've explored today.
It's a great provocation.
We've spent this time talking about the performing ego, this dragon at the crown chakra, as an esoteric internal spiritual saboteur. But look at the world today.
The modern landscape.
What if the entire architecture of modern social media, the constant curating, the posting, the metrics, the desperate management of our digital image, what if all of that is literally a global, industrialized machine built specifically to feed the dragon?
Wow.
A machine designed to keep us forever hiding behind our performances, terrified of claiming that simple, silent right to just exist and be seen. You don't need a judge's gavel or a wooden courtroom to face the absolute. Sometimes you just have to turn off the screen. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the forces that shape your destiny, and we'll see you next time.